Yugi, the king of games, also known as the greatest duelist of all time, versus Jaden Yuki, my guy. I ain't gonna lie, fuck with my boy. Supreme King, aka the next king of games, aka the nigga that Yugi passed the torch to. Now we have two of the most accomplished duelists of all time. Now let's see how they stack up against each other. We know in the final two episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX that basically Yami Yugi sent Jaden back in time to duel Yugi, right after the Battle City tournament. That's when obviously they had their first confrontation. Just from the start of the duel, Jaden already feels like Yugi is a very unpredictable duelist, and it's hard to kind of counteract, his moves and his strategies, obviously when they're playing against each other. And just based off the first two turns of the duel, Jaden already feels like he's back into a corner and that he's already on the defensive. I'd say it was a back and forth match in the beginning, but I feel like if I had to say, Yugi definitely had the advantage. He had Jaden more on the defensive than, vice versa. Yugi would destroy a monster on Jaden's side, and Jaden will always have a trap that kind of basically summon another monster back to the field to protect his life point. One thing I will say about Jaden's deck is that it's mainly centered around, his fusion monsters, and he always has a defense up. He'll lose some life points or he'll lose a monster on the field, and then he'll have, obviously a trap to kind of turn it around and kind of get a strong monster back on the field to defend his life points or to counterattack. And then also he has, obviously spell cards. He really amp his, elemental heroes and shit like that. Like for instance, Jaden got his Neos destroyed by Mirror Force, and he was instantly able to bring it right back on the field with Death and Rebirth. And not only did he bring his Neos back, but he also was aiming to destroy Yugi's Black Magician, like right off the bat, you feel me, with the same effect of that card. And even though Yugi was able to counter the effect of Death and Rebirth, he was still able to use the other effect of the card to basically get Neos and Dark Magician to engage in battle, so he was still able to take out Dark Magician, at the end regardless. And that's also why Jaden was able to take life points off Yugi as well. He would get a monster destroyed, he would have a counter with a trap, and then he would bring his monster back, and then, he would either be able to take Yugi's monster out or just summon a stronger monster to deal damage to Yugi. So like the middle part of the duel, I'd say Jaden, had the edge. He was able to land more clean attacks, and he had better counters. But a lot of Jaden's attacks in the beginning was definitely countered by Yugi, for sure. In the beginning, Jaden felt like he couldn't really get off any moves on Yugi. He felt like, Yugi was always one step ahead of him in the beginning of the duel, It was a lot of Jaden attacking in the beginning and Yugi just being able to have a trap card on the field basically every turn to just, counteract whatever Jaden was trying to do. Whether him, summoning Neos back to the field and him using Mirror Force to obviously be able to destroy every monster on his field, or him just being able to counteract the effect of Jaden's Death and Rebirth and, switch the effect over to, Meddling Elf Swordsman, so he can keep his Dark Magician on the field, Essentially, any counter Jaden would try to do, Yugi would always have a counter for that counter, that basically stay one step ahead of this nigga Jaden. So whether it be Mirror Force, Shift and Change, as well as Dark Magician Girl being able to deal damage to Blade Edge due to the fact that Yugi already had a card in the graveyard, to use its effect and to lower Blade Edge's, attack points so he could deal damage. Yugi's deck is really centered around his warrior type monsters and obviously his magician type monsters. He always has traps to get them out on the field. He always has, spell cards to amp them, and he always finds a way to special summon them, obviously with their special effects and whatnot. And lastly, both sides obviously just always have a way to bounce back, whether it be with a trap card or, a way to get, more cards in their hands so they can, recover and make a good move, to defend themselves or to, attack, Both duels are just tough, you feel me? Let's just leave it at that. Obviously Jaden's at his best when he has his fusion monsters out on the field. Obviously we know he can, fuse them using polymerization, or he has, obviously contact fusion when he has two Neospacians out on the field, or he has spell cards, obviously, to set shit up so he can get, Neospacians or elemental heroes out there and, fuse them together. And then he has strong special effects for his fusion monsters to be able to increase their attack points, based on, the number of trap cards or spell cards or monsters in the graveyard to really, power them up. And despite Jaden having his Neos out there with 6,800 attack points and, his Shining Flare Wingman out there with 4,300, Yugi with a simple trap card, obviously that correlates with his magician type monsters, is just able to redirect the attack. Yugi just really good at predicting, his opponent's moves. All in all, Yugi just thinks that Jaden's a really good duelist. He thinks that he's doing a good job countering his moves, and he also just has a really strong, bond with his deck. It even gets to the point where Yami wants to come out and duel Jaden. That's just how good he feels like he is as a duelist. Yugi is a really good duelist in his own right, But we know that at this point, this is, post-battle city. Yami's still really taking the helm, and he's, the main guy here, He's the better duelist out of the two. So for him to come out and be like, yo, I'm going to duel him, like, I got to test out his strength, that's a really good thing. Even now, just Jaden's strength by bringing out Slifer Sky Dragon, which is one out of, the 3 strongest cards in his deck. And then we have, obviously, Bonds Beyond Time, the movie where Yugi, Yusei, and Jaden obviously all meet back in Yugi's time and they duel Paradox. Essentially, this movie, from the looks of it, takes place, sometime after the whole Orichalcos thing, or maybe even after Kaiba's whole grand tournament or whatever. So this is like a later Yugi, and then this is Jaden like sometime after GX. Because like he's basically traveling around the world and he has, Pharaoh and shit. I'm showing this is like post GX. Him, Yusei, and Yami are just depicted to be relative as duelists, piggybacking off each other's moves. Just being able to keep up with each other as duelists is, make really strong moves together, in the duel against Paradox. And me basing this off the fact that this takes place, after Orichalcos arc is just due to Yugi and Pegasus having a relationship. Some unquantifiable time after that. Because, obviously after Duel's Kingdom, Pegasus just, he goes MIA. So we really don't see much of him until, the Orichalcos arc. And that's when Pegasus, kind of becomes a good guy. So, it kind of ended off abruptly. But if I had to choose who would win this duel, I would lean more towards Jaden just due to the circumstances of where it left off. So we saw that Slifer was on the field for a Tem. And then Jaden had Neos, Grand Mole, and Flare Scarab on the field alongside his flying chair wingman. And obviously with Slifer on the field, he was at a huge disadvantage. But you got to think about it. When an Egyptian God card is taken from the graveyard, it can only be back for that one turn. So Jaden had Karibo in his hand. And with Karibo, he can just, special summon him, and all damage is directed towards him and just negated to 0. Slifer will be gone. Slifer will go to the graveyard, and Yugi's field will just be wide open for attack. On time, that Jaden would beat this version of Yugi, just due to the fact that he's just depicted to be on the same level and caliber of Yusei and the version of Yugi we saw in movie Bonds Beyond Time against Paradox. But I definitely say that's where he stops. We just know that post Atem getting his memories back, this nigga just, gets a crazy ass amp. Essentially with Atem's memories of, the past, growing up in Egypt and his time as the Pharaoh, on top of all his modern day dueling experience, you put those two things together, you get a monster. Let's just keep it a buck. You get a monster. And he essentially creates, his strongest deck ever to this point. It's really no competition between any version of him prior to this point. As we know, this is the duel where Yugi surpasses Yami. So we know that in this duel, Yugi was able to take out Obelisk with ease. He was able to use a trap card to basically destroy the surroundings around Obelisk to weaken him and then take him out with one of his magicians. He's able to predict a lot of the face down cards and a lot of the moves that Atem is going to make in this duel. This was a crazy setup, for Yugi's victory. Essentially, to break this down, Yugi tricked Atem. He was able to foresee his endgame strategy, and he was able to foresee what cards he would play. So he essentially saw that he would use a Monster Reborn to bring back Slifer. So he used a spell card to lock away Monster Reborn in a coffin. And when the time came, it would cancel out Atem's, Monster Reborn, so he couldn't bring back Slifer. And he literally set him up to do it by using cards of Sanctity, which put 6 cards in his hand. And Slifer would be at, a really high level, 6,000 attack points. So that's the perfect time to summon him. And he basically made him think that was the perfect time for him to do that. And he canceled, out his Monster Reborn, with his spell card, which left Yami wide open for attack, and then that was his GG's. Yami even comes out at the end of the duel and just admits like he's been surpassed by Yugi at this point. It's even crazier in the anime because in the anime, Yami is even stronger and he's able to summon all 3 Egyptian god cards on the field. To break this down, Yugi uses Slifer's special ability against all 3, cards, Ra, Slifer, and Obelisk. Essentially, he spams fusing and diffusing his monsters. Time that happens, that counts as a summon. And when there's a new summon, Slifer takes down some of the attack points of the newly summoned monster. And with Magnet Force's effect, he's able to reflect that special effect back on each of the, cards, Obelisk, Raw, and Slifer. And it brings their attack points down all the way to 0. And once, that special ability brings, the targeted monster's attack points down to 0, the monsters are destroyed. And he literally used all of Slifer's power against all 3, cards. So an even stronger attempt is able to pull off a feat that no one's ever pulled off, summoning Slifer, Raw, and Obelisk on the field all at the same time. And then Yugi, without any cards as powerful as that, able to come up with a strategy to be able to take all 3 of them down. So Yugi is just like on a whole nother level at this point by the end of the series. At this point, Yugi's feat is like far surpasses Jaden's. Like, it's not even close. He's able to take down Slifer, Raw, and Obelisk. He did it, with a crazy tactical strategy. He didn't even have to use a strong monster or anything like that. He really used their power against them. At this point, I'd say a better matchup for Jaden would be Kaiba or Joey, end of series. Preferably Kaiba, because I feel like Joey would deadass get washed by Jaden for sure. That's the end of the video. Just let me know your thoughts on this matchup and on the video in general. And what other matchups y'all want to see from me in terms of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the future. So, just drop all your thoughts in the comments. If you like the video, like the video. Lastly, if you like this video, check out some more videos and you like those too, just hit that sub button. It's calling out to you, brother. Just hit that sub button. And I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.